You can also watch Book TV's coverage of FreedomFest 2011 online at booktv.org. But first, here is Don Luskin on his book I Am John Galt, which profiles people who symbolize characters, both heroes and villains, in Ayn Rand's novels.
Now, Angela Mazzillo was so deep in bed with Fannie and Freddie, it's ridiculous. They had, Countrywide had an exclusive deal with Fannie and Freddie to pass on toxic mortgages at bargain rates. Why anybody would want that, I don't know, but Fannie and Freddie did. Well, actually, I do know. It's because there was a program at Countrywide called VIP loans, known informally as Friends of Angelo. And this is where influential people in government were able to get loans from Countrywide on especially favorable terms. Now, they'd have to be pretty darn favorable, and when you'll lend $350,000 to a part-time housekeeper making $200 a week, I don't know what you do to be more favorable than that, but they were doing it. Let me give you a list of the people in Washington who were beneficiaries of Friends of Angelo loans. Now, this just reads like a who's who of some of the sterling characters of our age, such as John Edwards. Some surprising characters who've actually survived and in our positions of special power. Senator Kent Conrad, who at this very moment is the chair of the Senate Budget Committee. I love this one. Chris Dodd, the guy whose name is part of Dodd-Frank, the financial re-regulation bill that was only necessary because this stuff blew up. Alphonso Jackson, the Secretary of the Housing and Urban Development. And this is the best. Daniel H. Mudd. This is a guy who grew up having to deal with that famous saying, your name is Mudd. His name actually was Mudd. He was also the chairman and CEO of Fannie Mae. So this is what we libertarians need to watch out for. The unholy alliance of government and corporations. Now, to draw the contrast, though, I don't want to leaving you the idea that all corporations are bad or that all bankers are bad just because Angela Mazzillo is. The hero given the most loving treatment in my book is a fellow named John Allison. He is the former chairman and CEO of BB&T. BB&T is one of the top dozen banks in the United States, ranked by asset size. They are absolutely dominant throughout the 13 southern states of the United States. So out here, you won't see a BB&T branch, but if you're in Mississippi or Alabama or Tennessee or Washington, D.C., you certainly will. Allison built BB&T on utterly different principles than Angela Mazzillo built Countrywide. Countrywide blew up in the financial crisis, caused the financial crisis. BB&T totally survived the financial crisis. It and J.P. Morgan were the only two large banks that did. How did Allison do it? Allison happens to be an Ayn Rand fanatic. In 1985, when he became CEO, he instituted a policy of having his whole executive group read Atlas Shrugged. He created a statement of mission, purpose, and values for BB&T. I have a copy of it here. This is a remarkable book. I'm proud to say this is inscribed to me by John. Oh, and speaking of inscribed by John, after I'm done here, there's going to be a book signing of my book over at the Laissez-Faire booth, and John Allison, who is here and is going to be speaking at 10:30 in the Silver Room on the financial crisis, he's going to join me for the book signing. So if you would like to have not only the author of the book, but the main subject of the book sign the book, we'd be happy to do it for you. And John is a wonderful, charming man. This is your opportunity to interact with him. So Atlas Shrugged has been a best-selling book, but there are 30,000 employees of BB&T right now, and over 25 years, who knows how many hundreds of thousands of copies of this book has been produced. This book embodies John Galt's famous speech at the end of Atlas Shrugged. This is basically a summary of objectivism applied to how to run a business. And all 30,000 BB&T employees, right down to the tellers, are evaluated every 6 months based on how they are complying with these Randian ideals. Now, I want to quote to you from this and tell you what BB&T's statement of purpose is. Now think about this for a second. If you've ever worked for a large company, you know what their purpose statements are. It's to serve our communities, or save the gay whales, or something like that. Here's BB&T's purpose. Our ultimate purpose is to create superior long-term economic rewards for our shareholders. We're in it for the money. Who knew? Folks, they're all in it for the money. This is the guy who's honest about it. What happens when you're not honest about it? Instead of having 30,000 employees, you got 30,000 liars. That works for Countrywide. Don't try that one. Be honest with your employees. This is a noble mission. We all want to succeed. We all want to make money. We all understand that shareholders have to make money. Just say it. There are 10 fundamental values that support this at BB&T. I'm going to read them one at a time and tell you how this helped BB&T avoid the financial crisis. Value number 1 is reality. Boy, that's why say that, right? I mean, don't we all live in reality? Don't we always have to all respect reality in our work and in every phase of our lives? Well, apparently not. Angela Mozilla didn't respect reality. The people who ran Lehman Brothers didn't respect reality. The people who ran AIG didn't respect reality. I don't know what fantasy world they were living in, but you look back at some of the stuff they did, it just makes no sense. It was not about reality. So reality is their prime virtue. Their second virtue that they ask from every employee, right down to the teller line, is reason. Okay, you're starting to see the Ayn Rand connection? What does she call her philosophy? Objectivism. How does she characterize herself? She says, I am a philosopher of reason. This is what it's all about. Reality is what's out there. Reason is what's in here. It's our tool for apprehending and dealing with and profiting from what is out there. You have got to use reason to run your business. AIG didn't use reason. Lehman didn't use reason. What did they use? Fancy computer models that quants made for them. That worked really well. Maybe if they'd thrown in a few more Greek letters, it would have worked out. We'll have to try that again sometime. I hope not. The third virtue at BB&T is independent thinking. How about that? A bank that actually wants its employees to think independently. Let me tell you what that meant to BB&T. While the entire U.S. banking industry was figuring out how to compete with Countrywide and earn those big fees, in other words, to be short-term greedy, what were they doing? They were inventing all these crazy new so-called exotic mortgages. And the word exotic has now gotten anagrammed into toxic. And those mortgages consisted of things like negative amortization, and you get to so-called pick a payment. This was the way all banks in the United States made their money in the 2000s, except for BB&T, because there was an independent thinker who wasn't even particularly high up in the executive hierarchy, who said, this is really a bad idea for our customers. We're just not going to do this. John Allison didn't even make that decision. He heard about that decision after it was made. He said, yeah, it was the right decision. I trained this guy well. So these guys didn't blow up the world, and they didn't blow up when the world blew up because of independent thinking. The next value is productivity. Probably nothing needs to be said about that. The next value is honesty. Well, of course, bankers are supposed to be honest. They're not supposed to have their hands in the cookie jar. But let me tell you, dishonesty pervades business, especially when you lie at the beginning about what the purpose of the business is. Dishonesty pervades businesses when you promote and give power to and perks to and look the other way when somebody fudges and bends the rules and happens to make a lot of money that year for the company. That doesn't happen at BB&T. The next virtue is integrity. It's one thing to say, fancy words, but let me tell you how they put this into practice. Does everybody here remember the Supreme Court's Kelo decision, K-E-L-O? This was the decision affirming the ability of governments to seize private property and hand it over to, not to use it for government use, like to build a freeway, but to hand it over to other private parties, like for real estate development. Scandalous, scandalous decision against property rights. When John Allison heard about that, he said, oh my God, there's nothing more fundamental to a bank than property rights. We can't support this, so what are we going to do? I know. Let's declare that BB&T will never make a loan to a real estate developer to put up one brick or girder on any property that was acquired through eminent domain. Now, it just so happened that, the guy got about 1 million letters from customers saying, go, yeah, baby, way to go. Oh my God, there's a banker who has integrity. I'm moving my checking account to you. So you can do well by doing good. Another principle is justice. It's very important for a company like BB&T. They have grown by acquisition. They've done lots and lots of acquisitions and mergers of equal and takeovers. That's a very hard thing to do, because when a big company like BB&T takes over a little company like XYZ, the employees of XYZ are afraid they're going to lose their job. At BB&T, they look at the employees of XYZ and they say, okay, you're in that particular functional area, and you do it better than the BB&T incumbent who does that, so it's only justice to give you the job. That makes BB&T a preferred acquirer, which means it can acquire companies at a lower price than more predatory companies can. Justice has another meaning at BB&T. BB&T is headquartered in Winston-Salem. That is an area where racial discrimination has historically been a big issue. Racial awareness is obviously a big issue everywhere all the time. It's a national obsession. Let me read to you from that book about what they say about their policy on race. At BB&T, we do not discriminate based on non-essentials, such as race, sex, nationality. Is that cool, to call race a non-essential? It gets better. They go on to say, we do discriminate based on competency, performance, and character. You just got to love these guys. Now, BB&T is the bank that Atlas built. Absolutely bulletproof. Came through the crash smelling like a rose, but there's a tragic end to this story. In the summer of 2008, after Lehman fell and Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson came up with TARP, during the 3 or 4 week period when that was very violently debated in the Congress and among the American public, John Allison took a very courageous stand opposing TARP. The fact is, his bank didn't need it. But he opposed it in general. He opposed it on the grounds of moral hazard, on the grounds he didn't want to see government taking over any industry, including banking. Then a very sad thing happened. When TARP passed, Henry Paulson had the idea that if the Treasury said, okay, this bank needs it, this bank needs it, this one doesn't, this one does, this one doesn't, then all the ones who did need it would be identified as pariahs, all the depositors would run. So you know what we're going to do? All of you in this room aren't sick, but we're going to give you all the medicine, because we don't want you to know which ones of you are sick. So, what was that medicine? That medicine was that the government became a preferred shareholder in your bank. The government took options on common equity in your bank. The government made you sign a 250-page contract, the last section of which said that the government would develop in the future rules for executive compensation, which you would agree to abide by no matter what they were. And further, the government might come up with all kinds of other rules with respect to you, which under this contract you will not question. BB&T had been audited the previous week, passed with flying colors. Then one evening, BB&T's regulator met with John Allison and said, you really need to sign this contract. He said, I don't need to sign this contract. My bank is absolutely bulletproof. You just audited us. And the regulator said, oh, that was last week. We've changed the capital requirements. Okay, well, what have you changed them to? Maybe we passed the new capital requirements. Well, we don't know what the new capital requirements are going to be, but we just know you didn't pass. Please sign this. So what's John Allison to do? It's a terrible position to be in. Absolutely morally opposed to signing that contract, but if he doesn't sign that, the government destroys the bank. So he signed it. He is now the former chairman and CEO of BB&T. He is John Galt. He walked away. He retired. When John Galt left the economic world, he became an agent for the morality of capitalism, and that's what John Allison is now doing. Through the BB&T Foundation, he is endowing programs at dozens of universities throughout BB&T's footprint in the South to teach the morality of capitalism, where assigned reading is Atlas Shrugged. So he's doing the work.